Have you ever looked in the mirror and thought, why does my hair look so deflated? It's a feeling I know well, and sometimes that feeling isn't just about the hair. Just the other day, I was sitting in a waiting room, the vinyl of the chair cool against the back of my arms, even through my cardigan. I was waiting for my husband Arthur to finish a checkup, and I started thinking about how certain things in life seem to, well, deflate over time. Our energy, sometimes. And most definitely, our hair. So today, I want to talk about something very practical, finding one of the best lob haircuts for women over 60, especially when you wear glasses and your hair has decided to lie a bit flatter than it used to. It's a common story, isn't it? It wasn't the haircut I was searching for, really. It was the feeling of being seen. Because that deflation, it can start to feel like you're fading right into the wallpaper. For me, it all started with a sentence. A well-meaning volunteer said to me, a sentence I just couldn't unhear. I'll tell you that story in a little bit. This isn't about a magic makeover that makes you look 25 again. Honestly, who has the energy for that? This is about finding a style that feels deliberate, confident, and unapologetically you. It's about taking up our own space again. So, if you'll stick with me, I'm going to share a few things I've learned. And I'm going to share the one thing my stylist told me not to do with the bottom edge of my hair that made all the difference for my flat crown. It was the opposite of what I expected. If this feels like a conversation you've been waiting for, do consider subscribing. We're building a nice little community here, and there's always room for one more. And the best place to start is with the cut itself, because not all lobs are created equal. So, let's look at a few options I've seen out and about. The word lob, or long bob, gets used for all sorts of things. But from my observations, it isn't just one haircut. It's a whole category of them. A good foundation is everything. It's like the Dewey Decimal System for hair. You need the right category before you can find the specific story that works for you. Here are a few I've noticed. So, the first option I want to talk about is the classic lob. My friend Susan has this cut. We were at our book club meeting last week, and the slightly musty, wonderful smell of old books filled her living room. I noticed how her hair just falls perfectly to her chin, whether she's leaning in to make a point or just listening. It's practical, no fuss, and always looks put together. It's a quiet statement of competence. Next up, there is the A-line lob. That reminds me of a woman I saw in the post office line just the other day. Amidst the loud thump-thump of the date stamp, I saw she had this lovely silver hair cut just a bit longer in the front. It perfectly framed her jawline and balanced her striking, dark-rimmed glasses. It was such a picture of quiet elegance, a very deliberate choice that just worked. And finally, something I was very skeptical of at first, the softly layered lob. When I finally found my current stylist, a delightful young woman with blue hair, the faint, sharp smell of hairspray hung in the air as she looked at my hair. She said, "Carol, we can add just a few long, soft layers to keep it from feeling heavy." I was worried it would look choppy, a word I truly dislike. But she just smiled and said, "No, this is how we give the hair a little secret movement." I wish I could say I trusted her completely. I didn't, but she was absolutely right. It's a wonderful option if you want to add a bit of life without losing that strong foundational shape. So you see, it's not one size fits all. A haircut should be a frame, not a costume. It does make me wonder. So many of us were given one hairstyle in our 20s or 30s and just sort of kept it. It makes me wonder, what was a rule about appearance you used to follow without even thinking about it? I would be genuinely interested to read your thoughts. But no matter which shape you choose, there is one secret that applies to all of them. A piece of advice that completely changed how I deal with my flat crown. Now, let's talk about one of the biggest challenges with this kind of style: the dreaded flat crown. For years, I thought the only answer to hair that had gone flat on top was to create a sort of bubble of volume at the bottom. And all I ever ended up with was a hairstyle that felt stiff and looked square. It felt heavy at the bottom, which only made the top look flatter by comparison. It's a common complaint I've heard from other women, that their bob can start to look like a helmet. My stylist is the one who finally explained it to me. He said that when a bob has too much volume on the sides and bottom, it can make your face look full and actually make the top feel like it's flat to your head. It creates a shape that pulls everything down. The secret, he showed me, is to focus on what he called a strong baseline. Instead of curling that bottom edge under, you want to keep the last inch or so of your hair relatively straight and clean. It doesn't have to be stiff, just a soft, clean finish. By keeping that bottom line strong and crisp, it creates an illusion of density. Your eye sees that solid line, and the hair above it instantly appears fuller and has more movement. He also had me turn around and showed me in the mirror how he styled the nape area, the very back at the bottom, to lie quite flat against my neck. That contrast between the flat nape and the fuller crown is what creates the lift. All those years of fighting my hair, trying to force it into a bubble shape, and the solution was to do less. It's quite funny when you think about it. It's a small change, but it makes a world of difference. It's the key, I think, to truly flattering haircuts for flat hair over 60. And understanding that principle, that structure and contrast are more important than just fluff, is what finally gave me the courage to address that feeling of invisibility I mentioned earlier. My husband, Arthur, was in the hospital for a routine procedure a couple of years ago. It was nothing serious, but it was an overnight stay. I went down to the hospital gift shop to find him a crossword puzzle book, the kind with the spiral binding he likes. The air in the shop had that strange mix of antiseptic from the hallway and the faint, dusty smell of potpourri from a basket near the door. I was standing in line, holding the book, when it was my turn. The volunteer behind the counter was a very sweet young woman, probably in her 20s. She looked right past me for a moment, and then her eyes settled, and she smiled, a bright, professional smile. In a voice that was much too loud and slow, she said, "Can I help you, Delaware?" And in that one sentence, I was no longer a person. I was a category, a fragile thing to be handled with simple words and loud volume. I wish I could say I handled it gracefully. I didn't. I just paid for the book and left. But walking down that long, sterile hallway, the crinkle of the plastic wrap on the puzzle book was the only sound I could hear. It wasn't about the girl. She was just being what she thought was polite. It was about the realization of what she saw. A woman who had become vague, indistinct. It wasn't about vanity. It was about presence. I had spent a lifetime feeling like myself, and I realized, standing there, that I had let my appearance project an image of someone who was fading away, a woman whose story was mostly over. I decided right then that I was done with fading. I needed a change that was quiet but clear, a haircut that said, "I'm still here." So I walked out of that gift shop with more than just a puzzle book for Arthur. I walked out with a mission, and the first step was figuring out how to ask for what I actually wanted. Finding the right haircut is one thing. Actually getting it is another. So, when you find a stylist, here is some practical language I've learned to use. Instead of just saying, "I want more volume," which can be interpreted in a dozen different ways, try saying, "I want to create the illusion of volume. I'd like a strong, clean baseline at the bottom to make my hair look thicker." You can also be specific about layers. Say, "I'd like some soft, long layers on top to create movement, but I want to avoid too much layering at the ends that could make them look thin." And please, talk about your glasses. Put them on and say, "These are the frames I wear every day. I want a cut that works with them, not against them." It's about finding a collaborator. I've even read women giving each other the advice to go to a young stylist with brightly colored hair, the logic being that they are less beholden to old, outdated rules about what's age-appropriate. But the most important thing is this: you have earned the privilege of not having to get approval from other people. The goal is simply to feel like yourself. Choosing a hairstyle at our age isn't about chasing a number. I believe it's about aligning our outside with our inside. That feeling when you turn your head and the hair moves with you, instead of sitting stiffly, that small, simple freedom is what this is all about. It's finding a style that doesn't hide your age, but honors it. It's a joy to find those perfect haircuts for women over 60, with glasses that make us feel, finally, like we are wearing a crown of our own choosing. In the comments below, I'd love to hear it. What is one small way you've chosen to take up a bit more space in the world lately? Thank you so much for spending this time with me. It truly means a lot. And if today's conversation about creating lift for our hair and our spirits resonated with you, you might want to see my next video. In it, I'll be sharing the story of why I switched to layers at 63 and why it lifted more than my hair. Take good care, and I'll see you in the next one.